Okay, good. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna try and get back into a real quick thing. I was thinking about the deal about the separation between church and state. I've mentioned it. I've kind of like really kind of focused my attention that way towards it about the thing about even really beyond that. I mean, ultimately, I mean, if a person is just like designating their time that way with just like a foreknowledge um, granted as given as like a direction. How could it be, not, significant, or, how could it be ignored, kind of like thing as a consistent reminder whether the significance was any use at all, other than, it just like being a known fact. But yeah, so that's my thing about something about that I was thinking about that way with the separation between church and state. And it's the minimum in my mind. Ultimately getting to it seems so different whether or not if it's really going to be the issue of like a import and export, or what birthrights and citizenship means, or what all that means in participation um, in that way. So it ultimately gets to whether if birthrights, citizenship, birthrights and citizenship. Okay. Not that it's a descendant or ascendant, other than the thing about knowing um, birthrights and citizenship. I mean, normally birthrights hasn't really ever been taught, as far as I know, anything other than a birth certificate. Okay, although that birthrights might, really decide, when the reality about birthrights is what is representative of an experience. Ultimately, in my mind, representative of the backside of the U.S. $1 bill, or even the Air Force saying about them, airborne and all that stuff, or something like that. Just seeing the difference between the Corvette and the thing about the "In God We Trust" thing, or the same difference between the telekinetic and telekinesis thing about national security suggesting that there's telepathic communication, or knowing the difference between some alphanumeric thing about the Pentagon Reserve Reverse, or intelligence and opposite, or as American as hot dogs and apple pie thing about the "In God We Trust" thing, or what the Corvette has to do in that way with the thing about the knowing the difference between telekinetic, because normally with like national security involving um, information that's obviously available as like telepathic communication, or the alphanumerics ultimately, the mental telepathy minus God, excuse the minus, okay, but it's just an equation, not necessarily. But anyway, something a little bit beyond. Anyway, yeah. But anyway, getting to that Holy Spirit Secret Service and all that good stuff about the Jesus Christ, and all that stuff leading to the alphanumerics of 151, and yay, the Lord Jesus Christ, and that transportation of plenipotentiary, and um, some issue about the programming codes that way, or a plenipotentiary in that way, um, and what that is to legal tender. It seemed to be, like the tender is ultimately getting to, the spelling of the numerical value, and the numerical value, obviously the thing about binary numbers and computer programming, and programming, and the DER being the 27, the code thing, okay? I mean, it's ultimately getting to, um, you know, um, programming, and the way of what the programming code is to the alphanumerics of 200, or plenipotentiary that way with legal tender, ultimately getting to the one. It's one of the few, like legal tender. I mean, it's ultimately getting to the analytical thing about what it leads to, in the way of like 10 being 39 the angel, or 10 being numerical value of like what 1 and 0 is, or 0 and 1, or the only two numbers 1 and 0, sequencing characterization in sets of 4, in computer programming in the form of like binary numbers in sets of 4. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. So it's like that legal tender it really ultimately gets to like um, a programming code, and this tender thing being an analytical thing about um, the value of like the word, the syllable. It's one of the few syllables that I've like really realized that is significant, like the thermocouple semiconductor, in that way. The thing about legal media and entertainment and television being used that way as legal media, as well as a deposition, or what that really is, and entertainment law, and when entertainment is no longer entertainment, yet still, the thing about programming, um, or how it's actually designated, or what international law defines as protected, um, and what protected is or is not, or what its intent, whether its intent of participation is only reflecting what distribution means of availability, or maybe what consistency is to you know, you've heard the word habitat, or if it's like a habit forming issue of really what the real deal about simple pronunciation really is about a habitat, or what a habit is, or habitual in a way of what consistency only suggests might only be, instead of what being made as a manufactured geographic option of availability, with the intent of what designates how incorporation is actually, manufactured in a way of circuit, as compared to what maybe what degree description within description with its own degree is, as compared to what participating in circuit is, and what not participating in circuit is not. And what incorporation really is significant of, how it happens, or how it forms and originates, um, what incorporation is, and based upon, what is given as options, and what is chosen, or what might be suggested as presented as available, might only be maybe the accusation of the, maybe if not prediction of, like a request of consumption, or what a habitat is to, like, residential and neighborhoods, in a way of what incorporation normally according just to my access to information, and I'm a very brief time of, like, studying law, for a paralegal. I completed 9 courses on my 10th course. um, then I got into the television and audio production thing, and like, I can go on about, hey, there's like a lot more, like, in between, but yeah. Anyway, so like I studied law, like, far beyond really than, the short. I mean, it's like a 6 month course of, like, paralegal, but really it's like, really about 4.5 months. I mean, for I mean, it's like consistently, like, normally, 4 to 8 hours after, a 4 day, half a day, like from 8 a.m. to 12. But anyway, like, after that, and even after I left, and I mean, I really studied far beyond really than the time I actually spent on what was considered a campus at a, educational facility that way. But yeah, in any case, yeah. So I mean, I really spent a lot of time with it anyway. But anyway, yeah, my thing about it is that, and really I went off into the other direction. But yeah, so anyway, I wanted to get this real quick because I have this lighting set up, and I'm trying to stay focused in direction, because I deviate quite a bit when I get going. But anyway, yeah. So I don't need to explain that, okay? But anyway, I was thinking about that, and I'm gonna take a break before it's already like 7 minutes. So I'm gonna wait here and try and grasp my thoughts real quick. But anyway, um, yeah. So I'm going to jump right into where I was going in another direction a few minutes ago. But anyway, yeah. So I was kind of like focusing once again on that. Think about the yeah, right, yeah, yeah. So I'm going to, like, regroup here real quick. Okay. Hey, all right. Yeah, I think that might be enough time. Okay. Let me start again. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, um, it's kind of like getting off and doing it. I think I'm going to do it again. Yeah. A habitat. Yeah. There it is. It's habit. Yeah. It's kind of like the deal about the habitat, and habitual, or as what programming might only suggest is maybe what incorporation might only suggest, involving, what, the research statute seems to be low. So I mean, real estate terminology involving that non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization is normally heard more so in real estate, and doesn't even suggest escrow in any kind of way. Yet that really is the word involving real estate. Not necessarily identified as a method of banking, but yet it's still in all, it's a practical application in principle that way of, what a transaction to bank means, whether it's a direct deposit, or, something retroactive, now it is, now it's not, or, well, like, don't you know the difference? And like where you at now, kind of like you're having a SAN software issue in international financial management. It's like, can you distinguish the difference of, like, a direct deposit, or an endorsed, and whether an earned payroll is considered, a registered charity or annuity based upon, non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization, what that is to residuals or residential areas and neighborhoods, or what the commercial building means as compared to what residential neighborhood is considered, not necessarily a venue based upon, the structure itself, or, what that has to do with corporate law in a way of defining the building itself, not limited to the building, but, sometimes, the actual genetics, and thoroughly all about, a lot of things about, you know, really, terminology that's like a religious thing and not limited to, but, a corporation is really defined as an eternal entity in that way, and normally that would suggest the structure itself, whether it's, an eternal factor, of humanity, or, what life really is, or, certain things that are, identified, in religion that way. But yeah, so anyway, corporate law like really defines that with terminology, and sometimes it's really stressed. It's kind of hard to hear it, and hearing it sometimes it would only be at the right place at the right time. And I heard more of it. It seemed to be like when I went to the Jehovah's Witnesses, when it involved like a corporate level, and business, corporate and business, and in that way, and something very different in the way of like freedom of the Mormon Church, that way. Not necessarily identified in any kind of way of like import and exporting, or annuity, or, but that's my impression. But it's like it's kind of like I've heard it before. Hey man, you already know. Believe me, you know. It's kind of like it's kind of like really I hadn't been ignoring that fact. I mean, it's really kind of like naive. So like yeah, So like really, it's kind of like I'm not ignoring and that at all. But it's something about that, and in that way when I was like doing that, and it's not limited. I'm kind of focusing on religion, Christianity, not necessarily limited to, but truthfully so, predominantly 99% really. But anyway, and something about the Mormon Church of Christ Jesus. Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, okay, the American thing about it, and some other factors of that. Yeah, so in any case, yeah, so like the thing about that is that um the business corporate law, and what that is to Texas and Mexico, and it seemed to be like the significance about the equator and computer programming, and the operator that way, because like I'd mentioned previously in like a video that I made a few minutes ago about how the Jehovah's Witnesses suggested that the beginning of the last days is like 1914, but yet I had seen it both 1914 beginning of the last days as well as 1913, and I've seen it both with the Federal Reserve with both dates, so like 1913 and 1914, and automatically being there at the church at Jehovah's Witnesses for the brief time when I was going there, like when I was like real young with my parents, it was like like the Jehovah's Witness Watchtower, not necessarily like gee I was hoping for a long scene, but hey, how about that Jehovah's Witness Watchtower, right? Yeah, for real. But anyway, not necessarily that being blind to what a little bit of humor about that, but in reality, yeah, not funny at all, but truthfully so. But in any case, yeah. So yeah. So all that Switzerland, Jehovah's Witness stuff about the humor about the watchtower and that Longines watch and what it is to Switzerland, and other factors involving diamonds, and even Germany. I mean, the connectivity between the watch and the books, it seemed to be like so. I mean, really, I mean, it's hard to believe that just the baptism had ultimately led to like one word, something about the heartbeat of America, like a personal experience, right? That it led to like continually looking for the 78 alphanumeric value, right? And the heart guide thing about it, right? Heartbeat American, today's Chevrolet thing, and all that stuff, yeah. That escrow and FBI miracle, and like the robber thing, okay. Anyway, yeah. So really, I know it's not quite the normal thought of what it is, but anyway, yeah. So it seems to be like ultimately it gets to the thing about the same thing difference. I mean, at a higher level, it seems to be even getting beyond the Israeli fact and absolute value and what the 6-point star is to the alphanumerics of 138, or telepathic angel that way if the alphanumerics 138, or some real issue involving, in my mind, even presidential terms in office, and I'm not going to just excuse the thought of like knowing or not knowing. It's just that that's available information that way, or what that is to California, or certain factors of presidential reference that way. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, like I was looking at all that and thinking about it, because once again, it's kind of like it seemed to be ultimately the thing about the alphanumerics of 78, the zip code, and escrow, and going all the way through religion, and something about the love triangle and the delta force, and the schematics, the electronic schematics of the triangle, and being the delta of symbolic representation of the triangle, and what that is to the exclusionary rule provision, or the pi r square factor, or the triangle itself with the pi r square factor, and being instead of a 3-point, a 6-point, and that way of the Israeli flag, or what that is to the pyramid, or isometrics in a way of like a 3-dimensional actual participation that way, or what 3-dimensional really is to proper English grammatical composition in a way of why one pronoun cannot be used as a subject, yet at the same time, I mean, really, I mean, if it's really, the one pronoun cannot be used as a subject, is that, well, gee whiz, I mean, it's really, it's given a suggestion that it's not one way, when in fact it really is, and is not at the same time. It's because, it's like, hey, the subject is really the topic, but really, I mean, really, who's in control of that, at the same time, yeah. So there's something about that in the equator, and I ultimately derived it, about the computer architecture representative, the color code of the sand software, and the lizard, being 71, about the lizard, about the desert being 71 as well, and what that is to the alphanumerics of 71 and 90, as compared to that word relation between architecture and platform, involving, the lizard and the python thing about the architecture and the platform, and that lizard being 71, yeah, and the color code of sand software of international financial management that way, and securities and annuities and storage area network, and what that lizard is 71 Pearland, or even Moses that way. And there was something about, Chase Practicum, and it's ultimately getting to the desert being 71, and it's ultimately getting to like my thing, not limited to, and it seems to be the deal about the Christian religion and the difference between the King James Version Bible and like the Book of Mormon, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints between. And it's kind of hard for me to even believe it sometimes, and to think it's something, considering beyond of importing and exporting, protected waters of religious participation, really, I mean, of Christianity. And it's kind of like, you got to be kidding me. At the same time, the difference between the American thing about the Book of Mormon, Church of Jesus Christ, the Book of Mormon, Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, okay, without a doubt, the American thing. But the thing about the Sarah seemingly being, the one thing about her being like known as like one of the most, if not the most beautiful one in the entire book that's really described that way, okay. And there's something about that, and it's kind of like it really, something in my memory about. I think there was something about the desert and both Joseph and Abraham and the tent, and it's just not really kind of like getting into my thing about the seamless difference between the Book of Mormon, the Church of Christ Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, and some reality between the connectivity of the analytical of the book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, and the triangle thing about the analytical thing about the diamonds, or the Chevrolet Geo Prism and the Hyundai Excel, and one of the bigger shipments in the port of Houston, and what all that stuff is between Europe and what the metric system is to isometrics, and human capital beyond business and corporate law, that way of like categorization, getting into the itemization. I mean, the word's there, but really going through business and corporate law, and being itemized like in a circuit in that way, and getting into anything other. I mean, there's more to the explanation of what a circuit is, and when and where defining, or what is given as whether it's even identified as available as an option, or what does it mean to anyone when they're going through a circuit, no matter where it's at. And I chose what I chose about what the circuit is, when I go through it, or I have been through it anyway. But anyway, it seemed to me that really ultimately gets something about the content of the book of the diamonds and the desert of Secret of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, of some European, German-owned diamond, of like raw diamond in the Africa area. And I mentioned it several times. I want to try and cover this real quick because I've said it before, but I want to get this in because actually this is just like a new phone, and getting it in on YouTube this way. So it's actually this particular phone that I'm using right now, my mobile phone, is really the first that I'll actually be uploading probably 3 or 4 videos. I don't know if I'll finish it tonight, but anyway, yeah. But anyway, they're kind of lengthy, but really probably go on like day and night for several weeks, if not months, if not years, for real. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think I'll get right back into my music video. I probably would even be talking right now if like I had myself and wasn't having to rearrange all my stuff to get set up, and it's really not exciting that way. Yeah. So I'm trying to like be in a good mood about it. But anyway, yeah. So hopefully that'll be like a real into it than the real deal about the commercial building, and not limited to, yeah, for real. I'm really yeah. So anyway, that's a whole different direction, but not really. It's like I'm really looking at it right now, right? Anyway, so in any case, so like I was thinking about that with Sarah and the Chase Practicum being the alphanumerics of 140, like Paradigm Texas alphanumerics attenuation and all the 140 stuff about holy miracles and Purple Heart and all that stuff, okay? And Chase Practicum and Chase Practicum Joseph. And what the deal is with Practicum, I mean, if it's distinguishable difference between what Practicum and de facto is, I mean, I'm just now like really thinking about it, because like it's kind of like the word curriculum as compared to academic, or education. I mean, it's like it's kind of like it's referred to many a times. In my personal experience, not really defined, although the availability of just the word itself is given the impression of practical application of principle only, not that it's really distinguishing the degree level, or its intent and, distribution or direction, or just like being when and where that's at, In any case, yeah, so, if something like that was practicum in my mind of what maybe, de facto, and I'm going to have to really think about it, but what Chase Practicum is to the alphanumerics about, alphanumerics itself being 140 alphanumerically, or Paradigm Texas, or what Paradigm Texas USA is to Houston, Texas, or Electronic Power and We International, Selective Service, and the list goes on and on. Or my thing about the alphanumerics, or what the Code Blue and the 100 Club really might only suggest because of like 36 and 64, in a way of a 100-year centennial. And yet the pi r squared at the same time, ultimately getting in, to the 200-year celebration of America, or, my thing about quite a bit about that right there. And, Lord Jesus Christ, plenipotentiary transportation, and, the 200-year celebration of America itself, and quite a bit, and I'm not forgetting something about that, because, something about the thermocouple semiconductor, being a drummer and all that, and some information on television, like being like legal media as well as a deposition in that way. Whether the intent is hypothetical, or whether entertainment, yet the reality of being used, whether it's entertainment or like the real deal, in progress, um, um, it's still like legal media and on television anyway. In any case, yeah, so there's like a lot about that in the thermocouple semiconductor, that I've been thinking about quite a bit in that way, and Richard Nixon, the hey, innocent thing, right? Not that that would be an automatic V-twin figure eight drumstick twirl, or like drummer being 92 in Pentagon, or reserve reverse, or what the deal is, about an exponential quotient. Likewise, that's also given reference, and likewise, in addition, depending on who and when and where you're at, whether if not the V-twin, figure eight drumstick twirl, ultimately getting to a bicentennial quarter, so like the exponential quotient, is to quantum, beyond calculus, and what calculus being like 92 in Pentagon, reserve, reverse, and like a drummer, or what the bicentennial and 200-year celebration means, the cumulative rollover into the 300, new millennium beyond the year 2000. And there's something about that, and this year being the year 2023, and quite a bit about the year 2012. You heard it on world news and national news, and even the narration by Orson Welles of Nostradamus, and it's kind of like, really, it ultimately got to the year 2012, even the movie, but not really defined in any kind of way with the movie, but yet, ultimately, even the prediction of Nostradamus, that way of the projected estimate of like the year 2012, yet it ultimately gets to the exact opposite of the year 2020, 2021, okay? And it seems to be like the 21, 22, and 23 seems to be like the real deal of like, a combination of just simplistic of computation that way. The same with the symbolic representation between the CPTIS on the backside of the $1 bill, the new accomplice above the eye, identified as a deity in that way. The thing with this is that really what I'm getting at is that way with like the 13-band graphic equalizer as compared to the normally a 31 graphic band equalizer is the exact opposite of 13. 13 spelled out as like 99 and telepathic, and interpretation, all that stuff about RCA. I mean, I don't want to demean the value of manure by calling it the hay. You don't be shy, but hey, who's teeing off, right? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I don't mean to demean the value of like manure, okay, or anything like that. But anyway, I'm going to try and stay focused on so get smart, get Maxwell smart, okay. Anyway, yeah, so anyway, there's something about that, and the RCA thing about them, There's other factors that would identify, the V about the maneuver and the maneuver, the V, and what that is to the FDIC, or the UA and attenuation. Because, like when you get the absolute salute and the attention, the salute, it's not limited to, and there's more to it than that. But yeah, the thing with this is that, the salute itself in my mind now seems to be so significant of like pi r squared, finding the diameter. What's normally given as approximation of the radius being used, to find the actual diameter with the 3.1416, right? Well, anyway, that's my thing about the 64 and 36 thing about the alphanumerics equating to 181 in Houston, Texas area. Somewhere in between, Israel and America in a movie and all that stuff about that, as well as 64 being 0 and like the operator, and 108 Chevrolet and Bicentennial, and the list goes on about 108, or what that is to an operator, or being 0 being 64 in HTTP, normally in computer programming and computer language that way, with like binary numbers and the colon double forward slash, or a little bit of humor about the Houston Oilers and the night vision thing about the oil color code, or like night vision thing, and moving to the Tennessee Titans and that HTTP colon double forward clash of the Titans. A little bit of humor about that, okay? But anyway, yeah. So the Tennessee Titans, right? So anyway, yeah. So that's where the Houston Oilers went to, is the Tennessee Titans, and that's where they changed, and some other information about a place here not far from here called Almost Heaven. Houston Oilers used to go there quite a bit. And I think Dane Pastorini was like a racing speedboats out in Clear Lake, and normally it was identified like by NASA as Houston anyway, according to like rocket science and NASA, and before it was actually annexed. It's almost like a spirit of adoption principle. I mean, for real, biblical terminology that way. Spirit of adoption, huh? It's kind of like an unseen thing about the geographics, right? And annexation that way. With NASA, it's kind of like in the beginning was the Word of God, and you heard it all the time on television, right? It's phenomenal. It's like really like funny about how Houston annexed Clear Lake that way, and Clear Lake, Texas, been having alphanumerics 137, Washington D.C., and Holy Seagull and all that color code of the space shuttle, right? And anyway, the list goes on and on about the Holy Seagull and the color code of the space shuttle, and the Holy Seagull thing about the black and white thing about it, right? Anyway, yeah. So like I get into the bird thing about it as well, but yeah, good. Well, anyway, yeah, I have a lot to say, and it's already getting on. And I'm going off in so many directions when I'm talking. I'm trying to stay focused and concentrated in a direction, not so like broad span. But I'm going to take a break real quick. I'm going to get this, because it's going to take a while for me to get. Hopefully it won't take me long. It shouldn't take me long. Normally, like, when I upload anything with a normal rating, it's not like presented any thing about the processing. And normally, what would even be a 30-minute video would normally only take maybe seconds, not even a minute, for a 30-minute deal. But yeah, I'm ready for like all that light year speed to happen again. Like there was a time like actually I had several touchscreens on my mobile phones. Like it's like before I even touched screens, like I had like light year speed. I mean, it's like it was almost reading my mind before I even touched the screens. Like bam, it's like faster than I can blink my eye. It's like really phenomenally amazing me every single time it happened. It's kind of like wow, that's like extremely fast, right? Anyway, yeah, so like for real, it's like light year speed. I mean, how could it not be? I mean, wow, it's like even before I touch the screen, it's almost like static, energy, right? But anyway, yeah, so I'm going to kind of take a break here because I'm getting a little jammed with like wanting to, distribute, what I have to say about it, because like I'm like really got a lot to say, but I don't know if I'm going to or not. I'm going to take a break right here, okay?